Did you know there are cruise rules that can affect seniors differently from everyone else? That sounds a bit unfair, doesn't it? But the strange thing is, most older passengers do not find out about these rules until they are already booking, boarding, or standing at the shore excursion desk being told, "Sorry, this may not apply to you." And some of these rules can affect your money, your medical cover, your mobility, your cabin, your excursions, and even whether your cruise goes smoothly from the very first day. And before you wonder where this advice is coming from, I'm not just reading random tips off the internet. I'm a real experienced cruiser who has been cruising for years, and I make these videos to help you avoid the little problems that can turn into big headaches once you're on board. So before you book your next cruise, here are 7 cruise ship rules seniors really need to know, because most passengers have no idea they exist. Number 1. The excursion age limit that can stop you at the dock. The first rule seniors need to know is one that can catch people at the worst possible time. And that is the shore excursion age limit, because a lot of passengers think if the cruise line lets them book the excursion, that means they are good to go. But that is not always how it works. Some excursions have age limits, some have health warnings, some have mobility rules, some have fitness requirements, and some are run by outside tour companies who have their own rules, even if the excursion is being sold through the cruise line. That means you could be looking at a snorkeling tour, a zip line, an ATV ride, a boat trip, a walking tour, a waterfall climb, a kayaking tour, or even something that looks fairly simple. And there may be a rule in the fine print that affects older passengers, and this is where it feels unfair. Because you might not feel old. You might be fitter than half the people on the ship. You might be the kind of person who walks faster than your adult children while they complain about their knees. But the tour company may not care how young you feel. They may just look at the rule. And if the rule says there is an age limit, a health restriction, or a physical requirement, they can say no. The worst part is when passengers do not notice it until they are already excited. They have planned the day. They have packed the bag. They have put on the hat. They have told everyone at dinner, "We're doing that tour tomorrow." Then they get to the meeting point or the shore excursion desk and suddenly hear, "Sorry, this one may not be suitable." Or, "Sorry, the operator has an age restriction," and nobody wants to find that out when they are already standing there ready to go. This is why seniors need to read the excursion details properly before booking. Not just the pretty photos, not just the title, not just the line that says "beautiful views" or "unforgettable adventure," because every excursion says that. Look for the small words. Age limit, maximum age, not suitable for guests with limited mobility, must be able to climb steps, must be able to walk over uneven ground, not recommended for guests with heart conditions, not suitable for guests with back problems, must be able to board a small boat independently. Those little lines matter, and they matter even more on cruises because once you are in port, your time is limited. If you get turned away from an excursion at the last minute, you may not have time to find a good backup plan. You could end up wandering around the port area buying fridge magnets and pretending that was the plan all along. So before you book any shore excursion, especially if you are over 60, over 70, have mobility issues, use a walking stick, have heart problems, breathing problems, joint issues, recent surgery, or anything that could affect the activity, check the rules first. Ask the shore excursion desk directly. Say, "Is there any age limit or health restriction for this tour?" And if they say it is a moderate or strenuous activity, ask what that actually means, because moderate walking can mean very different things depending on who wrote it. Sometimes it means a gentle stroll, and sometimes it means you're suddenly climbing a hill in the heat while wondering why the brochure made it look like a peaceful garden walk. Also, be careful with independent tours you book online. They can be great, and sometimes they are cheaper. But make sure you read their age, health, cancellation, and refund rules before paying. Because if they refuse you on the day, the cruise line may not be able to help. So, this is the rule. Do not assume every excursion is suitable just because it is available. Check the age limits. Check the health warnings. Check the walking level. Check whether there are steps, tenders, small boats, rough ground, heat, long standing times, or fast movement involved. Because the best excursion is not the one with the flashiest photo. It is the one you can actually enjoy without being stressed, rushed, embarrassed, or turned away at the dock. And honestly, A gentle tour you enjoy is much better than an adventure tour, where the biggest adventure is trying to survive the first staircase. Number 2. The mobility scooter rule that can ruin the whole cruise. The second rule seniors need to know is the mobility scooter rule, and this one can cause a lot more trouble than people realize, because many passengers think, "It's my scooter, I need it, I'll just bring it with me." And that sounds reasonable. If you use a mobility scooter, wheelchair, walker, or any kind of mobility aid at home, of course you want it with you on the cruise. A cruise ship is big, very big. Some ships feel like floating shopping centers with bedrooms attached. You can be walking from your cabin to the dining room, then to the theater, then back to the cabin, then to the buffet, then to the lift, then to the wrong lift because apparently all cruise ships enjoy testing your patience. So if you need help getting around, you need to plan it properly before you sail. The mistake is assuming the cruise line will just sort it out when you arrive, because mobility equipment is not treated like a normal suitcase. Cruise ships have rules about where scooters can be stored, where they can be charged, how wide they are, what kind of battery they use, and whether they can fit safely into your cabin. And this is where seniors can get caught. A standard cabin may not have enough space for a scooter. The doorway may be too narrow. There may not be room to turn it around. There may not be a safe place to charge it, and the cruise line usually will not let you leave it sitting in the hallway. That part surprises people. They think, "I'll just park it outside the cabin." But cruise corridors are not storage areas. They are walkways. They are also emergency routes. Crew, passengers, wheelchairs, medical teams, luggage carts, and evacuation procedures all need those corridors clear. So if a scooter is blocking the hallway, the crew may have to move it, and if you rely on that scooter, that can turn into a big problem very quickly. This is why you need to tell the cruise line before you go. Not at the port, not when you are already standing there with your bags. Before the cruise, if you use a scooter, wheelchair, walker, oxygen equipment, or anything that affects how you move around the ship, call the cruise line's accessibility department and ask exactly what they need from you. Do not just call the normal booking number if you can avoid it. Ask for the accessibility team. Tell them what equipment you are bringing. Ask if it will fit in your cabin. Ask if you need an accessible cabin. Ask about battery rules. Ask about charging rules. Ask about storage. Ask about embarkation help. Ask about tender ports. Ask about getting on and off the ship. And if they give you an answer, get it in writing if possible. Because the last thing you want is to arrive at the port and have someone say, "Sorry, that scooter is too big," or "Sorry, you cannot store that there," or "Sorry, we did not know you were bringing this." That is not the relaxing start anyone wants. This rule is not there to punish seniors. It is there because cruise ships have to keep thousands of people moving safely in a very limited space. But if you do not know the rule, it can feel like the ship is suddenly working against you. So if mobility equipment is part of your cruise, treat it like an important booking detail, not an afterthought, because the right cabin, the right paperwork, and the right confirmation can make the cruise feel easy. But the wrong setup can turn every hallway, lift, doorway, and port day into a problem. And nobody wants to spend their cruise arguing about where to park a scooter when they should be arguing about something normal, like who ate the last dessert. Number 3. The tender port rule seniors do not think about until it is too late. The third rule seniors need to know is the tender port rule. And this one can really catch people out because it is not always obvious when you book. You might look at the itinerary and see a beautiful island, clear water, little boats, a pretty harbor, maybe a beach day, maybe a small coastal town, and you think, that looks lovely. But then you find out the ship is not actually docking right beside the port. Instead, it is anchoring offshore, and passengers have to get from the cruise ship to land on a smaller boat called a tender. Now, if you are fit, steady on your feet, and comfortable stepping between moving surfaces, that might not sound like a big deal. But for some seniors, it can be a completely different story. Because getting onto a tender is not always like stepping onto a normal bus. The ship may be moving slightly. The tender boat may be moving too. There may be steps. There may be a gap. There may be crew helping passengers across. And if the sea is choppy, even a little bit, that simple transfer can suddenly feel much more serious. This is where people get surprised. They assume that because the cruise ship is accessible, every port will be accessible too. But that is not always true. A ship can have lifts, ramps, accessible cabins, scooter access, and helpful crew. But the port itself might still involve tenders, steep gangways, uneven ground, old streets, steps, hills, cobblestones, or transport that is not suitable for wheelchairs or scooters. And that can change the whole day. Some passengers do not realize this until the night before. They look at the daily planner and see that the next port is a tender port, or they hear an announcement saying guests must be able to transfer safely. And suddenly they are thinking, hang on, can I actually get off the ship tomorrow? That is not something you want to discover at the last minute, because if you use a wheelchair, scooter, walker, stick, or have balance problems, hip or knee issues, breathing problems, or you simply feel unsteady, tender ports need extra planning. Sometimes the crew can help. Sometimes conditions are calm and it is manageable. Sometimes tender access is limited. And sometimes, if the captain or crew decide it is not safe, certain passengers may not be able to go ashore. That can feel disappointing, especially if that port was one of the main reasons you booked the cruise. So before you choose a cruise, look at the itinerary carefully. Check which ports are docked and which ports are tender ports. Do not just look at the pretty destination name. Look at how you actually get there. If it says tender, water shuttle, ship-to-shore boat, or anchored offshore, that is your sign to check further. Call the cruise line and ask what that means for your mobility needs. Ask if scooters can go on the tender. Ask if wheelchairs can go. Ask if passengers need to walk independently. Ask if there are steps. Ask what happens if the weather is rough. Ask whether the port itself is accessible once you get there. Because sometimes getting off the ship is only the first problem. Once you reach land, you might still face uneven paths, no ramps, steep roads, long walks, or transport that is not built for limited mobility. And this is why seniors need to think about tender ports before booking excursions too. A tour might sound gentle, but if the first step is getting onto a tender and then walking across a hot, crowded dock, it may not feel gentle anymore. So the rule is simple. If mobility matters to you, do not ignore tender ports. They can be beautiful. They can be worth it. They can be perfectly fine for many passengers. But they are not the same as docking right beside a flat terminal. And if you need help getting around, the difference matters. Because the worst time to learn that a port is difficult is when you are already standing there with your bag, your hat, your excursion ticket, and that sinking feeling that nobody mentioned the small boat part clearly enough. Number 4. The medical equipment rule that needs advance notice. The fourth rule seniors need to know is the medical equipment rule. And this is one you really do not want to leave until boarding day. Because a lot of passengers think, it is my medical equipment, I need it, of course I can bring it. And in many cases, yes, you probably can. But that does not mean you can just throw it in your suitcase, turn up at the port, and hope everyone works it out when you get there. Cruise ships need to know about certain medical equipment before you sail. Things like CPAP machines, oxygen concentrators, portable oxygen, injectable medication, sharps containers, medical refrigeration, dialysis needs, mobility equipment, ventilators or breathing support, special batteries, or anything that needs power, storage, safety clearance, or medical planning on board. And this is where seniors can get caught. They assume the ship is like a hotel. But a cruise ship is not just a hotel with a buffet and a captain. It is a floating operation with safety rules, fire rules, battery rules, medical limits, and thousands of passengers all using the same systems. So if your equipment needs power near the bed, needs to be charged, needs oxygen approval, needs a proper fridge, or needs crew to know about it in an emergency, you need to tell the cruise line before you sail. Not at check-in, not when you are standing in your cabin wondering where the outlet is, and definitely not at 11 o'clock at night when you suddenly realize your CPAP machine cannot reach the plug. That is not the kind of first-night cruise surprise anyone wants. The big one for many seniors is CPAP machines. A lot of people use them every night, and they are absolutely important. But cabins do not always have plugs where you expect them. Some plugs are near the desk. Some are not beside the bed. Some ships have older cabin layouts. And some cruise lines do not allow normal extension cords because of fire safety rules. So if you need a CPAP machine, contact the cruise line before your cruise and ask what they allow. Ask if they can provide approved equipment if needed. Ask if distilled water is available. Ask where the power points are likely to be, and ask whether you need to complete a special needs form. Another one is oxygen. You cannot just assume every type of oxygen tank, cylinder, or concentrator is allowed without approval. Cruise lines often need details in advance because oxygen involves safety rules, storage rules, delivery rules, and emergency planning. If you need oxygen, call the accessibility or special needs department early, give them the exact information, and get written confirmation. Then there is medication storage. Some passengers assume the little cabin fridge will be good enough for anything that needs to stay cold. But cabin fridges are not always proper medical refrigerators. Sometimes they are more like a cool box with confidence issues. Fine for a drink, not always fine for important medication. So if you have medicine that needs a certain temperature, ask the cruise line or medical center about proper medical storage before you go. Do not guess. Do not hope. And do not wait until you are on board holding expensive medication and asking, "Is this fridge meant to be this warm?" The same goes for needles and sharps. If you use injectable medication, you may need a sharps container. The crew can often help with that, but again, it is much better when they know. Because nobody wants to be improvising medical waste disposal with a coffee cup and a nervous smile. So the rule is simple. If you use medical equipment, tell the cruise line early. Ask for the accessibility department. Ask what forms are needed. Ask what equipment is allowed. Ask what paperwork you should bring. Ask what the ship can and cannot provide. And if something is important for your health, bring backup where possible. Extra medication, extra batteries if allowed, a copy of your prescription, a doctor's letter if needed, and written confirmation from the cruise line. Because once the ship leaves port, it is not like being at home where you can just run to the chemist, call your doctor, or grab a different cable from the drawer. You are at sea. And at sea, small medical planning mistakes can become very stressful very quickly. So, do not treat medical equipment like an afterthought. Treat it like part of the booking. Because the cruise line can often help you much better when they know ahead of time. But if you surprise them at the port with a machine, a battery, an oxygen setup, and a hopeful expression, you may not get the answer you wanted. Number 5. The travel insurance rule that changes after a certain age. The 5th rule seniors need to know is the travel insurance rule, and this one is not exciting. Nobody books a cruise and thinks, "Wonderful, now I get to read insurance wording for half an hour." But for older cruisers, this is one of the most important things to check before you sail, because travel insurance can change a lot once you reach a certain age. Some policies have age limits. Some cost more after 60, 65, 70, or 75. Some reduce what they cover. Some exclude certain medical conditions. And some look fine at first, until you read the part that says your pre-existing condition is not covered. And that is where seniors can get caught, because a younger passenger might buy a cheap travel insurance policy and never think about it again. But if you are older, or you have high blood pressure, diabetes, heart issues, breathing problems, past surgery, mobility issues, cancer history, or even something that is well controlled, the insurance company may treat that very differently. And the worst time to find that out is when something has already gone wrong. A cruise ship has a medical center, but it is not a full hospital. If something serious happens, you may need treatment on board, treatment in a foreign port, a changed flight, extra hotel nights, or even medical evacuation. And those bills can be huge. Not, "Oh, that's annoying," huge. I mean the kind of huge that makes you sit down before reading the next line. This is why seniors should not just click the cheapest travel insurance option and assume it is good enough. You need to check the details. Does it cover cruises? Does it cover onboard medical treatment? Does it cover medical evacuation from a ship? Does it cover your destinations? Does it cover your age? Does it cover your pre-existing conditions? Does it cover cancellation if your health changes before the cruise? And does it cover the full value of your trip, including flights, hotels, transfers, excursions, and the cruise itself? Because sometimes people say, "I have travel insurance," but what they really have is a policy that might not help with the thing they actually need. That is like bringing an umbrella with holes in it and feeling prepared, because technically you brought an umbrella. The words travel insurance are not enough. You need the right travel insurance. Another mistake is relying on credit card insurance without checking it properly. Some credit cards include travel insurance, and sometimes it can be useful, but you still need to know what it covers, what it excludes, whether your age affects it, whether pre-existing conditions are included, and whether you needed to pay for the trip a certain way to activate it. Do not assume. Call them. Ask directly. and get the answer in writing if you can. Also, timing matters. Some policies are better if you buy them soon after paying your cruise deposit, especially if you need cover for cancellation or pre-existing conditions. If you wait until right before the cruise, you may find the good options are gone, more expensive, or do not cover what you thought they would. So, the rule is simple. If you are a senior, do not treat travel insurance like a last-minute box to tick. Treat it like part of the cruise booking. Check it early. Declare what needs to be declared. Ask about your age. Ask about your medical history. Ask about cruise cover. Ask about evacuation. Ask about pre-existing conditions. And if you are not sure, speak to someone who actually understands cruise travel insurance, not just someone selling the cheapest policy online. Because the best insurance is not the one that looks cheap on the day you buy it. It is the one that actually helps when your cruise stops going to plan. And hopefully, you never need it. But if you do, you'll be very glad you checked before the ship left port. Number 6. The medication rule that can cause trouble at security or overseas ports. The 6th rule seniors need to know is the medication rule. And this one matters because many older cruisers do not just travel with one little packet of tablets. They might have blood pressure medication, heart medication, diabetes medication, pain medication, sleep medication, blood thinners, inhalers, eye drops, injectable medication, vitamins, supplements. And then there is the famous pill organizer, which is very handy at home, but can become a bit more complicated when you are traveling. Because on a cruise, you are not just staying in one country. You may be sailing between different ports, different laws, different customs rules, and different security checks. And what looks completely normal to you might not look so simple to someone checking your bag. This is where seniors can get caught. They pack all their tablets into a weekly pill organizer. No boxes, no labels, no prescription papers, no pharmacy bottles. Just little tablets in little plastic sections marked Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And at home, that makes perfect sense. But if someone at security, customs, or a foreign port asks what those tablets are, well, the blue one is for something, and the white one is for something else, is not the strongest answer. And let's be honest, half the time the tablets all start looking the same once they are out of the packet. You do not want to be standing there trying to explain your medication like you're playing a very stressful guessing game. So, the safer move is to keep prescription medication in its original packaging where possible. Keep the pharmacy label on it. Keep your name visible. Keep the dosage visible, and bring a copy of your prescription or a medication list from your doctor or pharmacy. This is especially important if you take anything that could be considered controlled, strong, unusual, injectable, refrigerated, or hard to replace while traveling. Because if medication gets questioned, delayed, lost, damaged, or confiscated, it is not like forgetting toothpaste. You cannot always just walk into a shop in port and replace it. Different countries have different rules. Different pharmacies may not stock the same medication. The brand name may be different. You may need a local prescription. And the ship's medical center may not have exactly what you take. That is why important medication should go in your carry-on, not your checked luggage. Your main suitcase may arrive later. It may be delayed. It may be delivered to the wrong area. And in rare cases, luggage can go missing. But your medication needs to stay with you. At least bring enough in your carry-on for the first few days, and preferably keep the essential medication with you for the whole trip. Also, think about storage. Some medication needs to stay cool. Some needs to be kept dry. Some should not sit in direct heat. Some needs proper refrigeration. And a cruise cabin fridge may not always be the same as a medical fridge. So if your medication has strict storage needs, contact the cruise line before you sail and ask what they can provide. Do not wait until you are on board and then discover the little cabin fridge is more decorative than useful. And if you use needles, insulin pens, injectable medication, or anything with sharps, ask about a sharps container. The crew are used to this. It is better to ask properly than to improvise in the cabin and hope for the best. Another thing seniors should be careful with is taking medication off the ship in ports. Only take what you need for the day, keep it labeled if possible, and know whether that medication is allowed in the country you are visiting. Most normal prescription medication will not cause any drama, but some strong pain medication, sleeping tablets, anxiety medication, or controlled drugs can be treated very differently depending on the country. So, the rule is simple. Do not travel with mystery pills. Keep labels. Keep prescriptions. Keep medication in your carry-on. Bring extra in case of delays. Check storage needs. And if anything is unusual, controlled, injectable, or refrigerated, sort it out before the cruise. Because the cruise should be about relaxing, eating too much, and trying to remember which deck your cabin is on. It should not be about standing at security trying to explain a pile of unlabeled tablets while everyone behind you suddenly becomes very interested in your business. Number 7. The dining accommodation rule you need to arrange before sailing. The 7th rule seniors need to know is the dining accommodation rule, and this one can make a huge difference to how comfortable your cruise feels. Because cruise ships can usually handle a lot of different food needs. Low sodium, diabetic-friendly meals, gluten-free meals, soft foods, food allergies, no shellfish, no nuts, vegetarian, special medical diets, or just meals that need to be a little easier on the stomach. The problem is, many passengers wait until they are already sitting at dinner on the first night before they mention it. They look at the menu. They realize nothing looks quite right. Then they tell the waiter, "Oh, by the way, I need low-salt food," or "I'm diabetic," or "I can't have gluten," or "I have a serious allergy." And yes, the crew will usually try to help. Cruise dining staff are often very good at this, but there is a big difference between the kitchen knowing before the cruise and the kitchen finding out when you are already sitting there with a fork in your hand. If you tell them early, they can plan. They can make notes on your booking. They can prepare meals properly. They can reduce the risk of mistakes. They can guide you through the menu. They can arrange safer options. And sometimes, they can have special meals ready for you from the first night. But if you wait until you are on board, especially on embarkation day when everyone is busy, it can become more rushed. And rushed is not what you want when food affects your health. This is especially important for seniors with diabetes, heart conditions, high blood pressure, swallowing problems, serious allergies, celiac disease, kidney issues, or any condition where food choices really matter. Because a cruise can make food feel easy. There is food everywhere: breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, buffet, main dining room, cafes, desserts, late-night food, food you did not even ask for but somehow still end up eating because it walked past you looking delicious. But if you have a medical food need, that much choice can become confusing. You may not know what is hidden in a sauce, how much salt is in a dish, whether something was cooked near an allergen, whether a dessert is suitable, or whether the healthy option is actually right for your condition. That is why it is better to register dietary needs before sailing. Call the cruise line after booking. Ask if there is a special needs or dietary request form. Tell them clearly what you need. Ask if it will be attached to your booking. And when you board, check with the dining team early, not right when dinner is about to start. A good thing to say is, "I have a dietary request on my booking. Can I please confirm the dining team has it?" That is simple, polite, and much better than waiting until everyone is hungry and the dining room is full. Also, do not assume the buffet is always the safest choice. The buffet can be convenient, but it can also be harder to know exactly what is in every dish. And with allergies or medical diets, there can be cross-contact from serving spoons, shared trays, or passengers who treat buffet tongs like a mystery game. The main dining room may actually be easier for some food needs because you can speak to staff, ask questions, and sometimes order ahead for the next night. So the rule is simple. If food affects your health, do not leave it to chance. Tell the cruise line before you sail. Check again when you board. Speak to the dining team early. And if something matters, be clear about it. Because the cruise kitchen can often help a lot, but they cannot properly plan for a need they do not know about. And nobody wants their first night at sea to turn into a stressful menu investigation when they should be relaxing, enjoying dinner, and deciding whether ordering dessert is research for the cruise experience.